My pleasure to introduce Jeff Janeczko. And I didn't realize I was doing this, so I'm just going to read just straight off what you've probably read here before. Jeff holds a PhD in ethnomusicology from UCLA and a BA in music from the Metropolitan State College, now University of Denver. His doctoral research concerned the contemporary Jewish musicians affiliated with the New York avant-garde and the Tzaddik label. The Tzaddik label's Radical Jewish Culture series engaged with ideas about Jewish music and Jewish identity in the late 20th and early 21st centuries. Curator of the Milken Archive of Jewish Music since 2009, he is also involved in teaching and research as an adjunct assistant professor with the Milken Center at UCLA. He co-created and teaches with Mark Kligman The Jewish Experience Through Music, that's the title of the course, and co-directs Milken Center's Digital Humanities Project, the discography of recorded Jewish music. His most recent publication, titled Curating the Virtual Museum, appeared in Voices of the Field, Pathways in Public Ethnomusicology in 2021. He is currently leading an educational video series on the history and development of Yiddish musical theater in America, which is, I believe, the topic here.
Something we all know a little bit about.
The topic at hand. So, and
It's an honor to be with all of you today and to be introduced by Ron, who is one of the biggest stars in the film you're about to preview. So this project really originated from a conversation that Mark Kligman and I had a few years ago, just kind of thinking about different ways to fulfill the center's educational mission, right? There's performance, there's research, and then there's kind of, how do we get this stuff into people's ears and into their heads? And I think it was Mark had the idea of creating these sort of teaching videos, things that might help people from other fields that are not, related to music, kind of teach this type of material, to incorporate Jewish music into curricula, to create, learning aids that would help students process the material and that kind of thing. And we initially kind of thought we would approach this by, interviewing artists and scholars, people who know a lot about the topic, and then kind of incorporating their commentary into what would essentially be kind of recorded lecture type videos. And Yiddish theater was just one of many topics we thought we could approach this way. Art music, sacred music, folk music, there's a number of different topics. So I ran the idea by some folks at the Milken Family Foundation where I work. And one of them just said, be a little bit more ambitious. If you're going to go out and interview people, do it right. Get good footage, do good interviews. Try to make it something that might have some resonance beyond the classroom. So it quickly turned into something much more ambitious than what it was initially conceived to be. We had all those topics. We started Yiddish theater because we thought, it's a fun topic. There seems to be a lot of interest in it. And also when we were looking around at the available resources, we couldn't really find anything that was very educational in nature. There, pieces like the Tomaszewskis or the Comedian, which do a really nice job of kind of, informing you about a family or about a couple of people. But and then there are other things that are maybe, a little bit sappy or nostalgic. So the goal was to really focus on making a good educational film, something that would make a contribution to the field and that would really, really hone in on the musical elements of Yiddish theater. We wanted to create something that is grounded in a curriculum, that would really emphasize the historical context, that would be tied to learning goals and standards, And we wanted to just really avoid the whole nostalgia kind of schmaltz thing entirely. Really just kind of tell the story for what it is. So the project has there's a certain scope to it that is still kind of coming into being a little bit, but the main centerpiece is going to be this film, part of which you'll see today, that kind of covers the general history and development of Yiddish theater in the U.S., and you're going to be seeing a 25-minute in-progress excerpt of that. It moves more or less chronologically, and it gets us up to about the 1930s. So if it had an accompanying playlist, it would start with Rosenkesch, Schmidt-Mondlin, and it would end with By Mir bist du schön. This will be accompanied by supplemental videos that cover, specific songs or composers. I've already kind of drafted a treatment of Rosenkesch, Schmidt-Mondlin. I would love to do, maybe a 20 or 30-minute video that really just kind of deals with the composers of Second Avenue. And then we're starting to form a curricular structure that's going to have, recordings with listening notes. It's going to have, background readings, archival resources, possibly suggested assignments, activities, discussion topics. And, the hope is that this will really be useful to educators teaching Jewish history, teaching, theater history, musicology and ethnomusicology, who just don't have the kind of background with Jewish history and culture that lends so much to this topic. So we'll appreciate any feedback you have today that will kind of help us further those goals and help this make a contribution to the field. Before I begin, I just want to thank a few people who have really helped the project along. I mentioned the executive leadership team at the Milken Family Foundation. It was one of those folks who really encouraged us to pursue a more ambitious direction. They've been really patient, really supportive of the project all along, which has been ongoing for a few years now. I've really loved working with you, Mark, for the past, I don't know, who knows how many years it's been now, but Mark, we collaborate on a lot of things. He's always a great partner. He's been really great to work with. On this, he's got, great ideas for content. He's really helped steer the narrative in positive ways, and then we've collaborated on almost every interview that we have done for this project, and that's been a lot. Close collaborators at the Milken Family Foundation. I worked with a writer-producer named Barak Goldman through the early stages of this project, who really brought just tons of passion and energy to the project. It really structured the narrative profoundly. Faith Ginsburg, an amazing editor who's in the room with us today, actually has kind of stitched this narrative together and really put up with countless kind of script revisions, shall we say. Their boss, close colleague of mine, Nikki Hayes, has been very generous with their time, has also offered some valuable creative feedback. Of course, I'd like to thank Daniela and Holly for putting this conference together, and David and Cheryl, who are in the other room now, who've really helped everything flow so seamlessly for the past couple of days. And then finally, the subject matter experts, three of whom are in the room today, which makes the moment a little bit more palpable. Deborah, Ron, and Mark are featured heavily in the film. I've interviewed about 20 people for this project, and everybody's just been incredibly gracious with their time and generous with their knowledge. If there's any fault in the film, that's on me. It's not on the people who contributed so much to it. So final notes, again, it's pretty polished, rough draft. It's a work in progress. We have not begun working on licensing yet, so there are going to be images in there that they're not high resolution. Some of them are watermarked. Let's see, there are spots where there's no underscoring, some footage that might be a little grainy and that sort of thing. The title of it is a working title. It's an ode to both Mark Slobin and Led Zeppelin. I was thinking about Mark's wonderful book, Tenement Song, and the whole connection of Yiddish theater to the immigrant experience, and of course Led Zeppelin's Immigrant song sort of popped into my head. So that's the kind of working title for now. Hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to discussion afterwards.
Bei mir bist du schön, bei mir hast du kein, bei mir bist die eine auf der Welt. Bei mir bist
Yiddish theater music meant not just plays that happened on stage, but also vaudeville houses, music halls, and recordings, and then eventually radio, and then film. In other words, popular culture, commercial popular culture.
By Mir Bist Du Shane is the stuff of legend and myth.
By Mir Bist Du Shane, please let me explain. By Mir Bist Du Shane means that you're grand.
Sholem Secunda was known as a virtuoso and then became active as a composer. And in 1932, he wrote a song called By Mir Bist Du Shane with lyricist Jacob Jacobs. By me, you're beautiful is what it means. And he wrote it for Aaron Lebedev to sing, who at first didn't like it. The story is Lebedev refused. Secunda put his foot down and said, look, sing it the way it's written. And if the audience doesn't call you back, then we'll do it your way. But the audience did love it.
There are several conflicting accounts of how it went from an obscure Yiddish flop to become a big hit. It was presented to these trio of young Midwestern girls who were trying to have a singing group called the Andrews Sisters. The English version became an absolute smash hit.
And became the biggest damn hit in the world in 1938. They were doing By Mir Bist Du Shane, even in Nazi Germany, until they found out it was a Yiddish song, when it was very quickly pulled from the airwaves.
I've tried to explain. By Mir Bist Du Shane, so kiss me. Can't say that you will understand.
Thank you. Apologies for the disruption. I realized about 10 minutes ago. This film has been through several revisions over the past week. You actually saw the second to last revision, not the most recent revision. Was very small changes. You might have noticed one of the slates over the recordings was incorrect. It was supposed to have a to be continued at the end, so I didn't just drop you off the cliff so quickly. But anyway, so I apologize for the disruption. Happy to take any questions, comments, feedback if you have any.
The editing to be a dialogue between everybody really works. Yes, absolutely. Very smart. Great job.
Yeah, that's all. That's really all Barak. I mean, he was the one that he went into it. No voiceover, and I said, there's no way that we can do that, and yeah, we could do it. So. Oh, you should see all the notes from. I mean, I went through all of the interviews to pull out the quotations.
There must be 10 to the 8th permutations of
Yeah.
how many ways you could scramble.
You could probably tell a completely different story from it too.
Yeah, but it's a wonderful idea. The whole conceit is just great. Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. It's wonderful. Maybe you can say something about how it continues from here. What's the
Yeah, I
plan?
mean it's going to be more or less chronological. I think probably from here we go into explore the world of film a little bit more deeply, because you saw a couple film clips, but nobody really talked about that whole industry and how it is related to the theater. Then we will talk a little bit about the kind of post-Holocaust, not disappearance, but decline of Yiddish theater, and then into the 1970s and the revival, kind of culminating in the Fiddler auf dem Dach.
Thank you so much for this. So exciting to see so many familiar faces from this room in the film.
Unless you're me.
Yeah, exactly. My question for you, and really I think anyone who participated in the effort could speak to this potentially, but what was the process of filming this like? Did you track people down on their home terrain? Did you bring them here? What was the story behind pulling this together?
Sure. We mostly went, on location. I mean, most of the stuff was filmed in New York, so we would go with, the foundation crew would travel to New York. We would rent out a space, and we would do 5 or 6, interviews over the course of a few days. We did a handful in the where we all were last night. Right off that room is a recording studio, so we done a handful of interviews there. Where did we go anywhere besides? Oh yeah, we went to Boston, of course. We filmed Hankus at the New England Conservatory. Yeah, and then the approach has been. It's not really accurate to call it ethnographic, but was to interview people and then sort of try to tell the story that emerged from the interviews, I guess. Yeah.
One thing I wanted to ask about was something about the chronology, and I was wondering if you were planning to talk at all about the much maligned Schund operettas of Horwitz and Lateiner that transpired in the 1890s that was sort of the source of elite chagrin against which so many people reacted, including Rumshinsky, that drove so much of his work in the 1920s and others after him.
I guess the answer is hopefully. We definitely talked with people about the Schund plays and just haven't quite figured out the right spot to put it in there. But it is one of the gaps that needs to be addressed. Yeah.
Speaking of that gap, we're actually interviewing Ruthie today, this afternoon, to work on that gap. I think that would be really interesting for us to hear from all of you is how we can use this film, and if the tenor and tone and content of it is the kind of thing that you would show in a classroom or that you would use in some way, because that's what's really driving us. Is, what's the right really approach to this? Because one aspect is, how do you make a PBS documentary that lives a particular life? And you got to get big names and stars and different things to do that. And that's one thing that we've been thinking about and doing a little bit of. But Jeff and I are kind of anchored to the educational aspect of this whole endeavor. And as Jeff said, we teach this class together here at UCLA. We hope that it will be used in that class. And then a lot of things that are, on the cutting floor of this version, we plan to use on particular segments. It's like every time we come to New York, we make sure Mark Slobin's available because he's been probably filmed the most. And we have so much about various composers, various songs that we're still trying to grapple with. So beyond what we're trying to create, it would be so helpful just to hear from you how you think this could be used and what your kind of guidance is to us on that level.
First of all, it's just such a pleasure to watch and listen to. I don't usually, only very rarely do I get to teach a course on Yiddish theater, but I do every once in a while. And I've looked for something like this, and as you know, it doesn't exist. Yeah. And some of the things that are out there are, they can be very sentimental, or they're not as careful. You have such a stellar array of scholars coming from it from a lot of different angles, and it would also work I'll work Yiddish theater material and Yiddish culture into other courses I teach, like the Jews of modern Europe. And because you've got, obviously this is an American focus, but because you're starting in the cradle in Romania, et cetera, there's certainly material there and big themes. You've got people with a broader perspective, like Hasia, talking about anything dealing with immigrants. And if I was doing, I'm not currently, but if I was doing this sort of the American Jewish experience or American Jewish history, it would absolutely work. So I think there's so many ways. And if you were doing, like the kinds of things that Sam is teaching, and music of the immigrant experience more broadly, like because you capture the Yiddish experience, but also, of course, there are big themes that will apply to other immigrant populations. So, this would just be a fantastic resource in the classroom for people in a lot of different disciplines.
Well, that's sort of the want the music to be a core because we want this to be about musical, Yiddish musical theater, but at the same time, we want to really culturally integrate it. So, we want historians or people who teaching American culture, Jewish culture yeah.
Thanks, this looks great so far. I was just going to make a suggestion. I know in my last town in Youngstown, Ohio, there was a local film festival, but it was tied into the Jewish Studies program there was at the university, and those film screenings were often a way to catalyze other events around them. Say maybe they would have a Holocaust survivor in town and connect it to a film or something. So you may want to look at those individual Jewish film series that are probably, I'm sure, in many other cities. Might be a place where you can get screenings all over.
For promotion, you mean? Yeah.
Just to refer to your question, Mark, I teach the Introduction to Jewish Theater. I think this is extremely useful for students, especially for this generation that finds it difficult to deal with long texts. I think there is a beautiful balance here between visuals, which I understand will even be more, and interviews, which is really great. And I think you really interviewed core people in the fields, and students can then Google their names and find their papers if they want some more. I know that at least at Tel Aviv in the music school, this could be very useful. There's no one teaching such a course at the moment. Usually they invite me to give sort of a lecture about this, but this is better than me. They can just watch the film now.
Yeah. Noreen?
Hi, Jeff. Very nice.
Thank you.
I'm always thinking of the wider audience, and education is very limited, and there are Jewish film festivals in every city. And to make it more attractive, it needs to have bigger stars. Hershey Felder, Michael Tilson Thomas should be interviewed as Tomaszewski. He's did a whole thing on Tomaszewski. Barry Manilow. He was just on Broadway doing everything, and he's so involved in Yiddish stuff now. So from my point of view, it needs more marketing value and bigger stars in it.
And the project has, it's gone through various permutations, but a recent, initially we thought, well, maybe we can kind of make one film that fits both markets, the educational market and the broader market. And then several months ago, we kind of split those into two. So Barak Goldman, who I mentioned earlier, is sort of starting to develop the concept for something that might have some of that more of that star power, but we might be able to bring them, back together a little bit.
One very quick final thought before I have to slip out to make it to the airport. So thank you, everybody, for this incredible couple of days. Last thought on the film. The only sort of comment I had as I was watching was that in trying to put a narrative like this together and a narrative arc together out of all of these disparate stories, you inevitably have to reify a certain narrative about what the Yiddish theater scene in New York looks like. And so my only comment or thought as I was watching was, if there is a way, as you were suggesting, to make little spin-off films that kind of nuance the narrative even further and do provide this similar, visual and cultural context and make use of all the great educators you have at your fingertips, then that would probably be another great direction to go. Especially, in a classroom setting, we don't have time necessarily to watch full-length feature films, but we can show 10-minute clips or things like that. So breaking it down for educators might be, potentially a good future direction to consider. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I have 6 hours of Ron Raboy talking about various aspects of the Yiddish theater. I could do 20 minutes probably on Rosenkeshmet Mondlin with what Ron. Yeah. No, but thank you. It's a good point, and yeah, we kind of want it to be modular in some sense, so that people can sort of break it up and use it. Yeah.
Okay, I think we'll end it there.
Great.
Thank you so much, Jeff.
Thanks, everyone.